एक detailed introduction in ante shumara marchigi session e babata o marchigi topics ani babata o machi martomachi pati speaker anchi expect kut kane chi babata ma marchida haji jamawitti ma marchi wati saranchi saria wati ma asten guest welcome kana man geshtar english kana taki ya baluchi bazi sarpanaba to yeah I hello everyone, in English again. I want to welcome you in this session to speak about the oppressed nation in Asia and the region. First, I want to welcome Mr. Mako Qocgiri. A little introduction. He's a political expert, the political scientist, has been working for Civika, Azad, the Kurdish Center for Public Relations based in Berlin. The Free Society Center has set itself the task of providing information about what is happening in Kurdistan and thus making a contribution to containing the war and paving the way for a peaceful solution. I want to welcome you on the stage. Secondly, I want to welcome my next guest, Dulkun Issa. Is the president of the World Uyghur Congress, and he was a former student leader of the pro-democracy demonstrations in East Turkestan in 1988 and founded the Students' Science and Culture Union, working on programs to eliminate illiteracy, promote science, and lead after other students in East Turkestan. I want to welcome you on the stage as well. Nextly, I want to welcome my next guest. He's Dr. Laku Luhana, and he's an intellectual, a renowned human rights activist, and leader of the World Sindhi Congress. He has remained actively associated with the movement of Sindhi people for their rights, including right to self-determination, for more than 4 decades. He is a PhD in environmental science and a great friend of the Baloch people. I also welcome you on the stage. Thank you. Now that we have all our guests, I want to welcome Mr. Hassan Dost to share his opinion on today's session. Thank you.
نتوار تمامين كونفرنس دومين كشبين من غير بتجربني بلنا وشاد كان especially مهتمانا في كردستان أو خاصة سندوديشا أما يخاطر بلوچي قبل جرن كي دنيا تا أولي ما مول مراد में شما بعد وتي माती ज़ुबान introduce कराना برون ताकि माँ में कौमी मारवती में एक माती ज़ुबान यास्ते कुजा दरत कुशता वाहगाने चम्मे चिराग 1015 हरवा को तक ये हरवाहा कुजाम ग्वार नजेड़ तक पतंगवेन ब्रातां कुजाम ब्रात वती कोपगान नदंत कोपग असला मनीदा आएगा मुराद दुदांक ती बलूची माती ज़ुबान आबर कनग है मूल मुराद में शमपेशाम गुश्तन द्वारा रिपीट करने की ज़रूरत नहीं जर्मनी जोन BNM में अरवादा एक प्रोग्राम में कुर्तागत के 2 साल सरा बाद एक इंटरनेशनल इन एक ब्रादर इन कॉन्फ्रेंस से अर्धेक विविध के शाही तवसुता मावती मसला व मसाइल में जेड़ा अस्तं के मैं गुलामी अस्की बलोच को मैं एक जो दे बिंदात कोता आयर दुनिया दे में प्यारी तो पेश कन की टिमा बलूचिस्तान ते चे बैगे थे और मैं बुनियादी इन मसला बलूचिस्तान चे अवली बड़ा BNM में नमक बल्लना 2017 یک ہمیں کانفرنس اردگ بوتا شاعران دا سنگتانے میں فیصلہ بوتا کہ نزدیک تر یک دیگا کانفرنس اردگ بھی آئی نکل اناؤنسمنٹ 2020 تک بوتا گت بلے شمار چونکہ معلوم ہے 2020 تک نوزدہ یک وبا یک بیماری کرونا شکلہ کی دنیا تعالام بوتا گت شاہی سبابا آ پروگرام کینسل بو یما پروگرام تسلسل ہے مرچی شما بیماری رند کی دنیا واپس پر تمام پولیٹیکل و اکنامیکل پارٹیزیں مسئلوں مسائل خاطرہ یا گند و نند خاطرہ پچ کنک بوتا تو مرچی یما تسلسل کے سنگتانی پروگرام ارداتا مرچی دومی ما کمیشی بیک گراؤنڈ دو دانگوشا کہ میں بلوچستان ہے یا ہما قبضہ گیر پاکستان ہے تھا ہما مظلوم قوم یا غلام قوم کی تگوش ہے کیا سندھی شکلہ بلوچ شکلہ پشتون شکلہ یا سرائکستان شکلہ موجود ہے آوانی بنیادی مسئلہ گو پاکستان چین آئی بنیادی مسئلہ تحت ہے کہ من گندین اچھارین آئی چونکہ میں ہما نیشنل کویسچن ہے پاکستان اندر کہ خاص کر بلوچستان 1946 تھا کہ انگریز ہے قبضہ گیریت علا سبھی باقاعدہ آئی آزادی اعلان بھی بڑا شاعران دا پاکستان کے بلوچستان قبضہ کا تو ما ہمیں گندہ کتاب دے پاکستان کے یک قبضہ گیریت بھی میں سرزمین تھا موجود ہیں آج یہ دورہ سندھی بھی یا پشتون بھی یا بلوچ بھی آوانا تو تاوادے برا سرزمینہ ہمیں نیشنل کویسچن قومی سوال کے حل نبی تناوادہ یہ جدوجہد یہ قربانی انجو دیما روانہ بین تمام منزلہ کے ہر ہمیں مظلوم قوم یا جیسے غلام قوم مشتقنے کی ایک قبضہ گیر ہے دستہ قبضہ گزرن یہ مسئلہ حل نبی تھے جدوجہد انجو دیما روان بھی پوری منزلہ دومی انسانی اکانی پائمالی کے 2000 پاکستان نے اسپیشل بندات کرتا کہ بلوچ قومی تھا یک انچین طبقہ سیاسیین کی جیڑی تمارے تھے کہ بلوچستان ہے واحد حل بلوچستان ہے تھا آئی غلامی ختم کھنا گئیں باقی ہر چیز کی جمہوری نارو بنیاد استند بھی دنیا تھا کہ آوان ذریعہ بعض قوم کنن لیکن ہمیں سلسلہ بلوچ مخلوقات یا بلوچ پولیٹیکل ورکر یا لیڈرشپ ہمیں بندات پاکستان تام کرتگت کہ آوانی مول و مراد ہمیں بوتت کہ ماں بلوچستان ہے ہما قبضگیریت خلاف گو پاکستان ہے ہما اداران کیا شاید یک جمہوری چیز سرپت ببن کہ دنیا تا انٹروڈیوس استے کس اگا گو کس نندگ نلوٹی باید آئی اما لوٹ مراد آنی مطابق آئرہ آزاد کنک بھی دنیا تا بعض انچوچی مثال موجود استن کیا وطی آزادی گپتگن گمے گند و نندان گما اما جمہوری یک حصہ ہے کہ کسی ریفرینڈم شکلہ یا کسی ہر شکلیہ کی دنتی یا نام دنتی اما حساب ہوتی آزادی گپتگن ہوتی ملکان ہوتی سرزمین ہے وطواجب ہوتا گا بلے ما یک ونچین قومی گشتہ نہ کنے گو ظالم یا دیم کبتگن کیا یہ چیزانا ہما جمہوری چیزانا ہما قانونی چیزانا ہما انسانی چیزانا سرپد نبی آتنا یک جبر ہے کہ اس طریقہ کارا سرپد انتما جبرن بلوچستان بلوچ مخلوق یا سندھی یعنی افغانان وتی دست چیرے ریکورتا ہمیں گام انجران ہے میں ہمیں قومی سوال ہیں کہ ہمیں جبر خلاف جدوجہد ماچر بنیادی طور پر کہ اسٹارٹ ابھی 1948 تھا تو یہ چیز خلاف کیست جدوجہد انچو بر جائیں دے مارا 2000 2005 اسپیشلی وعدے کی ہمیں مخلوقات ہمیں چیزاں مارت کہ پاکستان ہمارا جمہوری طریقہ کار سرپدنا بھی لہٰذا اما ہر چیز کی جدوجہد کنگا کہ پارلیمانی طریقہ کار یا دونوں طریقہ کار کار آمد نان لہٰذا بلوچستان مسئلہ میں شہباز تچ کا وتی سرزمین آزادی ہے ہمارا پاکستان اب دنیا دیم آبادی کا وتی آزادیہ اما بغیر تو غلامی خاتمہ اعلان کا بھلے پاکستان شمارو چا یک ظلم و جبر بلوچستان تو شروع کرتے کہ تمام سیاسی مخلوقات لیڈرشپ کی آئی ابتدا بطور خوف یک ترس صورت بلوچ نیشنل موومنٹ چیئرمین واجہ شہید غلام احمد آئی سٹارٹ اگپ تھے آئی زین آمیشت کہ مائشان یا سرخیلن جنن دورت ہیں شاید اسی پتریچ کہ کہت یک سوچ فکر کہ آئی زینا آتا کہ ہم کونگن ہر چیز کے پارلیمانی یا بقول پاکستانی جمہوری طریقہ کار ہے یہ کنگنان تھی لہٰذا ایشان کو زور و جبر ما شاوانی آزادی یا ہما ڈیمانڈ ہے کہ کنگان کہ میں سرزمین زور زبردستی قبضہ کنگ ہوتا شاید دور دارہ کے کوشش ہے کنان بھلے یک جتائیں چیپٹر میں قدراج نہ کریں کہ میں اسپیکر نشتگن تھا کچھ میں ڈیٹیل چیزاں سر بار رکھنا چاہت روچا بغیر روچے مروچے پاکستان گوتی شدت بلوچ قوم بلوچ ہما سیاسی مخلوقات کہ بلوچستان آزادی خاطر ایک سوچ فکر داری آوان جنگیں بیگوا کنگیں دور دے گئیں یہ بابت ما ہر وعدہ ہر فورما یہ گشتگن ہما دنیا ہے انسانی حقوق خاطرہ کی ارداتگن تنظیم ہے آوان اکثر دم میں ریکویسٹ ہمیں بوتا کہ آپ بلوچستان مرچی دنیا ہے تا یک انچین خطہ جوڑ کنک بوتا کہ آئی تا تنہا بلوچ نہ بلکہ تمام اما انٹرنیشنل آرگنائزیشن یا اما انٹرنیشنل این جی اوز کی آوان روگیت غیر جانبداران توقع یک تحقیقات کنگیت کے بلوچستان تا پاکستان تا کجا مدہ ظلم جبر کنگین بلے پاکستان آوان اجازت نہ دنت عام پاکستان خلاف چوچن ایکشن زورا گنان مرچے سوشل میڈیا بدولتا ہر چیز کے ظلم جبر بلوچستان تا بہ گئے تھے عام نکلا دنیا چیر دو کو نائند بلے ماگندن کیا چوشن خاصن ایکشن زورگنان ہر وعدہ میں ریکویسٹ خاص کر یو این شاہی اداران کی پا انسان یک کن خاطرہ کار کنگان ہمیں بہت باید آیک کمیٹی چیزیں پٹائنی تاکہ بلوچستان برو میں ظلم و زورہ کیا خاطرہ انٹرنیشنل سطح یا انٹرنیشنل کورٹ آف جسٹس تا ایشان بارہ پاکستان بلوٹی آوانی سرزنشہ بکانتے اور یک چیزیں دیگا منمدہ ایڈ کنک لوٹین انسان یکو کا نیوالا کہ ہمیں لاتین ماں جو کپ سال بیت کہ ما گندگان کہ بلوچستان تا یک نوجوانہ نے کھے پہ خودکشی نمگا روا گئیں تو آوانی بیک گراؤنڈ جو یہ وڑائیں کہ یما مردمند یما پولیٹیکل ورکرند یا شما پولیٹیکل علاقان آوانی تعلق یستے یہ شان دو سہ وار برک بوتا ایشان یمین کے تزلیل کنک بوتا کیا شا شما خیم پان واپس برگشتگ نونا اترا ہمیں قدر سمجھگاں کہ آوان وقت سمجھیں کہ میں زندگ بوگ نون بے فائدہ گے ہر دروچا خیم پان تا بلوٹ آوان تزلیل اپکا یا ما خیم پان تا ما ٹارچران دوران شاید گمے مردمان انچین چیزیں بوتا کیا نترا قابل نہ سمجھیں کہ ما دیگا مزید بیوتی معاشرہ تا بیوتی مخلوق تا یک جو آنے زندے بگوازینن آوان سر تمام پولیٹیکل اور فیملی وائے جامع علاقائی سطح تمام پابندی جنوں کے آوت زندہ یک جوانین بطور انسان یا صورت دیما بے بران تو مروچ باند گندگا میں کہ تمام مردم وقت خودکشی نمگر روگان تو تی زندہ خاتمہ کرن یہ ہم یک مزن جیڑے باید ایشی بارام ہمیں آرگنائزیشن کی انٹرنیشنل سطح کہ اصلاً آباد ایشی بارہ یک کمیٹی چیز ٹائنک بھی بلوچستان روک بھی باید آئے چیز ہم بچاری کی شانی سبب چیئن دو میں یک واقعہ ہے کہ شمار یاد ہیں فیک انکاؤنٹر ہمیں انسانی حقوق کو نزدیک ان چیز ہے کہ یہ گو شدت بلوچستان تھا پاکستان ملٹری یہ شرط ماں بارا گئے اور وعدے کیا ہے دل لوٹی کہ ہمیں बेगुआए मखलूक हैं हमें कि पोलिटिकल मखलूक़ात या अमा बलोच मखलूक़ात या शक के बुनियाद जुर्ता बुर्ता होती अजियत खानान तबंद कुर्ता आवान जूरी कारुजन तो आवान एक सरमाचार या कंची चीज़ें दुनिया दे मशूक़न कि इस मिनी सराम लकुर्ता माइश रह जाता और इसी खातिर स्पेशली हमें ज़्यारत तक रिसेंटली वाक़या बुता इसी खातिर हम गुआर उबरासा या मा बेगुआन मखलूक़ात फैमिली एक जद्दोजहद कुर्तन तो कंटिन्यूसली इलाते रोज भी क्या वन्या में एक मुआहदे चीज़ें बूता कि हम यासरत एक बूता पाकिस्तानी इदारा नेमगा कि सही माह अंदर अंदर माँ के समय चीज़ारा दारा के कोशिश करना भले माँ शुमा चीज़ा जाने कि पाकिस्तान तमाम इन इदारा चाहे आई कोर्ट भी बहन चाहे आई पार्लिमानी इदारा भी बहन या दिगाई डेमोक्रेसी वाला इदारा भी बहन माजाना क्या कुल हमें चीज़ा उछा कि माँ बेख्तियार कि मैं फौज इदारा MI भी आई SI आंच पे लगाम बूता क्या वामा कंट्रोल करते न करना तो मी माँ स्पेशली शबियन मैंने मगा वती बरात के मैं वडेन मजलूमंद आवानियो सरजमी में बेरा कब्जा कनक बूता कि कुर्दिस्तान है नामा जानक बीत आवानी में स्पेशली थैंक यू गुशानिश कि यक नज़दीकी या ये आला देगा गुमे संगतान यक कोऑपरेशन कुर्तगन और माँ तगन यक दोमी में मोल मुराद ये आला जोरगे ममे बुता कि मैं यक नज़दीकी बायदीन गुमा तमाम इन दुनिया था कि मजलूम कौम अस्तन या सादा अल्फाजान था गुलाम कौम गुश्ता कनन के आवान सर जबर कब्जा कनक बूता मालूटन की माशे यादगारा नज़दीक बेबें वती दर्द वती गम आंगे कि दोमी शेयर पिकनन पर्चे के माई चीज़ा सरपा दिन के अमा के दर्द ताइन आयरा दिगा कसे न मारी अमा कसे के में दर्द मुसीबत ता शाही सरा गजगा गुड़ा होती हमें उड़िन पराते है दर्द मुसीबत ता सरपत बूत कन लिहाजा मन द्वारा कुर्दिस्तान कुर्द कौम है वापस थैंक यू कना क्या गुमा ये बारा कोऑपरेटिव कुर्ता मिन्नतवार
Just a short, brief introduction of what he actually said for the people that don't understand Balochi. This conference is secondly happening. First time it happened in 2017, and the second time it was planned to happen in 2020, but we all know that COVID had other plans, and we were not allowed to meet in such big crowd. So we're doing it in 2022. Just a brief introduction as well to our guests and the topics that our first session named is Balochistan and oppressed regions and nations of the region. So as we all know that in Pakistan, it's not only the Baloch that is being oppressed, and Sindhis and Pashtuns and Kurds in the other region as well being oppressed. So we share the same struggle, we share the same pain. So to understand each other, we come together and share our own struggle and pain and bring awareness to our own people. So I'm also really thankful for the Kurd community that they've given us this hall that we can gather together this day. And one last thing that I think is very important to know, what Mr. Dost already shared, that it's really important to know why this conflict exists in Pakistan. The nation question is really important, that all the nations in Pakistan are asking this question to the government, to the oppressor, that we are not here to be silent, we're not here to be killed, we're not here to be murdered. So we need our own human rights. All of the people that are being oppressed in Pakistan need their rights. That's why this question exists, and that's why we are here to discuss it. I also really want to all of you to thank you, and just to discussion, I want to ask Mr. Mako Qocgiri to share his awareness and also bring light to the problems of Kurds and what we actually need to know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. First of all, I want to apologize for my English. I mean, I haven't been speaking English for a while, and especially like a political issue. I'm not sure if I can manage it in a proper way, but I will try my best. Thanks for the invitation. It is really an honor to have you here as the Kurdish community. So you might know like the Kurdish freedom movement is an internationalist movement as well. Like we're not struggling only for our rights, but we see it as a duty to bring struggles together, to learn from each other, to share our experiences in the fight against oppression. So it's for us a big honor to have you here and to host this conference as well. Yeah, as it has been said, my name is Mako Qocgiri. I'm working for Civika Azad. This our place is like a center for public relations for the Kurdish movement, and we started our work around 10 years ago to inform the German society to raise awareness about the Kurdish issue. Like in Germany, there are living around 1 million Kurds, and overall, there are living about 45 million Kurdish people. Kurdistan is like for 100 years right now, since the end of World War I, divided into 4 countries. So we have Kurds living in Turkey, we have Kurds living in Iraq and Syria and in Iran. And in all of these 4 countries, the Kurdish people are being oppressed or have been oppressed in the history. Like I can give an example from my own family just to get a picture how this oppression works in Turkish Kurdistan, for instance. Like the biggest part of Kurdistan is northern Kurdistan, as we call it. It's like the Kurdish areas which are under the occupation of the Turkish state, and around 20 to 25 million Kurdish people are living in Turkey, and they don't have the elementary basic rights. So, for instance, like when my father grew up in his village, he told me like a story which might be all of Kurdish families tell to their children, because in the village everybody was speaking Kurdish. It was a Kurdish village. Then they came to the age when they have to go to elementary school, and the teacher in the elementary school was like some person who doesn't know any word of Kurdish, but is from the west part of Turkey. And the duty of this teacher was to make these Kurdish children, to educate them to Turks, to Turkey, to impose the Turkish identity on them. So the first thing what the teacher did to my father, and not only to my father, was to tell his students, you're not allowed to speak your language anymore. And they had to learn Turkish in school. And if they spoke Kurdish, they have been beaten up. Like that was how the assimilation politics worked. I can also give the example of my mother. Like my mother went with her family in a small age because of economical reasons to Ankara, to the capital of Turkey. And her parents, they were like frightened to teach their children Kurdish, because they knew like when the neighborhood knows we are a Kurdish family, we will get problems. So officially in the ideology of the Turkish state, there were no Kurds living in Turkey. Like everyone has to be, there were no Kurds living in Turkey. Like everyone has to accept the Turkish identity. And so my mother didn't learn any word of Kurdish, even if she was like from Kurdish origin. Her parents talked Kurdish to each other, but with their children, they only talked Turkish. And today, like I was born in Germany, and I was raised with the Turkish language, and that is like the consequence of this assimilation politics, which worked out in Turkey. Yes, there was a situation for many years in Turkey, but there was always also kind of struggle for the Kurdish rights, for the freedom of the Kurdish people, and a long time the Kurds weren't able to organize themselves. But after the students' revolts in the 1968s, there came up Turkish socialist movements, which were talking also about the Kurdish issue. And there was something new, because till then, since the founding of the Turkish state, like nobody dared to speak about the Kurdish issue. But there, at this time, like socialist movements, they were talking also about the Kurdish issue, saying like, when we do the socialist revolution in Turkey, then we will also give the Kurds their rights. and it was something new. And from the students' movements, like also the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK, emerged. And this movement was, as I said, like from the beginning, it was an internationalist movement. Like the founder of this organization was Mr. Abdullah Öcalan, and the first two persons who he had organized were not from Kurdish origin, they were Turks. They were socialist Turks, but they saw it as their duty, like as socialists, as internationalists, to fight for the rights of their Kurdish brothers and sisters. And this was like the origin of the movement, the foundation, like the first organization of people who participated in the PKK were at the universities in Turkey. Later on, they moved to Kurdistan, and they organized like their struggle. In 1978, the PKK was founded. In 1980, there was a military coup in Turkey, and this military coup was like a breaking point for the socialist movements, because it was the time when all the socialist movements couldn't exist anymore because all of their leaders had been imprisoned or exiled. What the PKK did is that before the coup, they went to Syria and started to prepare for the armed struggle. And the armed struggle was like organized in Palestinian camps. Like there, they didn't learn how to do a guerrilla warfare. The Palestinian organizations helped the PKK to organize the struggle. And in 1984, they started like the war for self-independence in Kurdistan. It was an armed struggle that started in 1984, and it continues until today. And the war in northern Kurdistan and Turkish part was like really brutal throughout the 90s, especially. There have been 4,000 Kurdish villages being destroyed from the Turkish state. Thousands of people have died within the guerrilla or on the side of the Turkish army, but also a lot of civilians suffered real damages through this war. Like they are talking about 17,000 people who were like political activists. They didn't participate in the war, but they vanished. Like they were being murdered on the streets in the 1990s from so-called unknown perpetrators. Like everybody knew it was kind of paramilitary from the Turkish state, but nobody got convicted for these murders. And then until now, like the families of those people who have vanished in the 1990s, they're like demonstrating to get the corpse of their children. So that's a fight that still continues today. And yeah, as I said, like the PKK started their fight for an independent Kurdish socialist state, but with the 1990s, there was kind of change within the PKK. Like the PKK in 1993, there was one period when the Turkish state was like one part in the Turkish state was thinking about the political solution of the Kurdish question, because they also saw like economically and politically this war leads to nowhere. So at some point we have to do a discussion and find a political solution for our question. And the PKK, and especially Abdullah Öcalan, also got convinced like there need to be somehow a political solution. So from the 1990s, they started like negotiations, which were really a short period, because the Turkish president who advocated for this peace process, he suddenly died. Like in the state, there was one part who was in favor for this political solution, and there was another part which was against it. They wanted to continue the war. And this president died because of a heart attack. That's the official version, but many people don't believe that. They say like some parts, the deep Turkish state has killed him. That's also being told from the family members of this Turkish president. Then, like 1998, Abdullah Öcalan got exiled from Syria because of the political pressure of Turkey. Since until then, he was working for the PKK in Syria. And in 1998, he got exiled. He went to Europe to enforce somehow a political solution. So he wanted the support of European states like Greece and later on Italy to support somehow a political process for the solution of the Kurdish question. And he also got signals from the European states that they are like willing to help to find a solution between the Turks and the Kurds. But at the end, it was kind of, the Kurds got somehow betrayed, and Abdullah Öcalan was handed out to the Turkish state as like, with the help of like international intelligence services from the US to Mossad and like the European powers. And since then, since 1999, Abdullah Öcalan, the leader of the PKK, is imprisoned in Turkey. He's right now living a lifelong sentence in the Imralı prison, in a prison island in Turkey. But Öcalan used his time in prison to develop like theoretically and ideologically a new perspective for the solution of the Kurdish question. And he got the time to evaluate like the changes in world politics. I mean, the Cold War ended in the 1990s. Then he took a look also at the anti-colonial struggles worldwide, and he came to the conclusion that like after these anti-colonial struggles, like especially in Africa, but also in other parts of the world, after they succeeded, there was somehow a kind of disillusionment in the society. The people saw like, okay, we kicked out the colonialists, but the system which has been built up was kind of authoritarian. It was not a socialist system, and even the exploitation from the former colonialists somehow continued. And as a result of that, like the PKK came to the conclusion, and Abdullah Öcalan came to the conclusion that the problem of the Kurdish people is not going to be solved with an own nation state. Like the nation state is not the solution for the Kurdish question. So he detached the right of self-determination from statehood and developed a new perspective, which he's calling democratic confederalism. This one, like this system, this perspective is an anti-statist. Like it's anti-statist, like it's against the state system, but it's seeing like a solution through autonomy in the Kurdish regions and through implementing democracy. And the implementation of the system is like right now working out in northern Syria, in the region we call Rojava. Since 2012, they are being built up like a system which is not based on our own Kurdish state, but rather on democracy, on grassroots democracy. And this is one political line in the Kurdish struggle to which we also feel really connected. There's also a second political line in Kurdistan, which has a center in southern Kurdistan, Iraqi Kurdistan. And they go for a whole different political approach. Like the Kurds in Iraq, they also have a really bloody history. Like they're being murdered and massacred under the Ba'ath regime, under Saddam Hussein especially. And Saddam Hussein was like, he wanted to find the final solution for the Kurdish question by genocide. In the 1980s, he, like in a campaign, he killed around 180,000 Kurds. Alone in the city of Halabja, at a short while of 1 or 2 days, he bombed this whole city with poison gas, and around 5,000 people died there. Like that was the approach from Saddam Hussein. And there was also a struggle, a resistance against Saddam and the Ba'ath regime in Iraq. And this resistance was led by the Kurdistan Democratic Party under the rule of Mustafa Barzani. And this party has a totally different approach to the PKK. Like they are also struggling for autonomy of the Kurds, but they somehow uncoupled the social question in Kurdistan from the national question. Like they're fighting for autonomy, but they themselves, they're like a conservative party. They don't want to change like the society into a democratic way, but they want to get their own power. Somehow they doing the same way like the PKK criticized their anti-colonial movements in their history. They are repeating, the KDP is repeating it. And since the fall of Saddam Hussein in 2003, there was this Kurdish autonomy established in northern Iraq, in South Kurdistan, but the rule there, like the KDP is ruling this autonomy, but they've installed somehow an authoritarian system where there is, for instance, no press freedom, and it is based on nepotism. Like the Barzani clan, the Barzani family is ruling everything, and that's like a point which we don't accept. Like as sympathizers of the Kurdish freedom movement of the PKK, we don't accept this kind of system. We are in opposition to that. And like the KDP is today also politically and economically heavily dependent on Turkey. So all their like economical support is coming from Turkey, and this is somehow contradictory because like the Turkish state is oppressing the Kurds in Turkey, is attacking the Kurds in Syria and Rojava today, but economically they support the KDP, and the KDP needs this support. So the Turkey is favoring a Kurdish system which is under their rule, under their control. And today the KDP is, for instance, also supporting the Turkish war against the PKK. So Kurds are fighting against Kurds because they are like economically dependent on Turkey. And our political line, and that's what I try to underline, is fundamentally different from this political project in South Kurdistan. Our principles are based like on grassroots democracy, on the equality of women. The struggle of women's rights is a basic pillar for the PKK, and also like the freedom of all religious communities and peoples in the region. And as I said, like in Rojava, this kind of social system is now being implemented. Is the social system, the system in Rojava is based on these principles. And yeah, and a few words on Rojava, and then I will end my speech also. Like, as you know, many of you might have heard of Kobani, like when the war against the Islamic State took place in 2014, 2015. And after like the liberation of Kobani, the self-defense forces of Rojava, of northern Syria, they also liberated more and more Arab cities from the so-called Islamic State. And what happened in these cities where like the Islamic State, which were under the rule of the Islamic State, is they are mainly Arab cities, like there's an Arab majority there, but the system of Rojava tried to be like an umbrella also for them. So they could organize their own cities, they could be part of this democratic system in Syria and northern Syria, and they could build up like their own self-rule based on people's councils. And that is actually like the perspective of the Kurdish freedom movement. Like we want to not only liberate the Kurdish regions and build up a grassroots democracy, actually our aim is like we want to democratize the Middle East, because building up a Kurdish state right in the middle of authoritarian states won't be a long-lasting solution. So you will always be in war with your neighbors, and that won't be the solution. So our principle is like we want to get in touch and organize ourselves with the people all over the region who fight for their rights, who fight for democracy, and build up kind of a democratic umbrella. And this is what we today do also in Turkey with the HDP. There's a political party which not only consists of Kurds, but also other groups in Turkey. This is what we try in Syria as well with the Arab population, but also with other minorities. And of course, like the state powers, like Turkey and other nation states, they see this project as a big threat. Also the KDP, the Democratic Party of Kurdistan, sees this as a big threat for their own power. But what we see in Rojava and throughout the region is that there is a need for democracy, and the people are like supporting this project. So we see Rojava especially as a hope for all people in the world who are convinced that another world is possible. So let us learn from each other. Let us learn from our struggles. That is the basic point for all people who fight for their freedom. And we can really learn a lot from each other, from our struggles and solidarity. Like the big powers who are oppressing us, they are working all the time together. So we as the oppressed have to build up bridges to each other as well and strengthen our struggles. I would like to end my contribution with that. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, I'm right here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It was really interesting to know that how significant of our struggles are and similarities between them. Do you guys have any questions? Please have these questions until the end of the session. Nextly, I am going to invite Mr. Turkul Isa to talk about China's oppression against Uyghur people. And I think it's very important to know the Chinese history, bloody history in their countries as we are facing it right now in our country. Thank you.
It's okay. Okay, good morning everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for this national movement to invite me today this event, this important event, and talking about Uyghur crisis, Uyghur issue. Yeah, maybe some of yours knows the Uyghurs issue, some maybe not. A little bit, I will, before I speak the constitution, I'd like to give some very brief and the background information of the Uyghurs. Uyghur is living in we call this Turkestan and west southwest of China. This is 1.8 million square kilometer territory. This is an occupied country by China, 1949. Communist China has been occupied since 1949. We have neighboring countries, 11 countries we have neighbors. It's Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Pakistan, India, and Russia, and Tibet, and China. Maybe most of you people know the Tibet issue a little bit. We have completely the same problem as Tibetan. Yeah. So this country, as I said, 1949 has been occupied, and 1955 is guaranteed autonomous region. Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. Actually, China says Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. Xinjiang is the Chinese name. Xin is new, Jiang is territory body. It's a new territory body. So its meaning is occupied country. But China claimed this is a part of China from ancient time. But name is Xinjiang New Territory. So 1950 is despite of the granted autonomy, but this is just a paper autonomy, and the economic, cultural, political, all right has been continued violated by the Chinese government. Until 2016, Chinese government and the target all unique Uyghur identity. As I said, the language, for example, today is the Uyghur language, one of the official language according to the Chinese constitution, autonomic law. Even today, too. But in the principle, in the reality, Uyghur language completely forbidden to the school, from kindergarten to the university. When I was in Turkestan, teaching language of university school is the Uyghur language. But since 2004, Chinese government implemented a so-called bilingual education system. Is in Chinese Uyghur education system, but actually it is Chinese Mandarin education system. So from university level, Uyghur language is taught from the university, step by step since 2006, from kindergarten to the university. Even if you look at the Chinese money today, there is a 5 language, one of the Uyghur language, one of the Tibetan language. Still, if just last week I was in the United Nations, tomorrow after this conference I'm going to Geneva again. If we are talking about this issue, China all the time, oh, we respect the Uyghurs' language, right? You can learn the Uyghur language everywhere, even Chinese money. But in the principle, in the reality, it is impossible. Today, Uyghur language only can speak at home. But is officially and the Uyghur language not speak at all. We are Muslim. According to the Chinese Constitution, Article 36 guarantees the freedom of religious. Everyone has the right to believe or not believe religious, but no China has a right don't believe religious, but not the right to believe religious. Chinese Communist Party anti-religious organization actually is the largest terrorist organization around the world. Chinese government constantly saying Uyghur are terrorists. But is the Chinese Communist Party is the largest state-sponsored terrorist organization, because so far more than, not I'm saying, is experts saying 48 million people were killed since they established 1949. Mao Zedong time, maybe no use Mao Zedong, he killed more than 45 million people during the 10 years China's Cultural Revolution time, 1966 to 1977, is in 10 years. Among them, maybe 1 million Tibetan, 1 million Uyghur has been killed. Rest of them Chinese people. Today, Chinese Communist Party not only persecuted the Tibetan Uyghurs and Hong Kongs, even also today Chinese Communist Party arrested huge number of Chinese intellectuals. You know, Liu Xiaobo is a Nobel Peace Prize laureate. Chinese scholar, it's not Uyghurs. He's Chinese, he's a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, but he was put in jail, he died in the jail 2 years ago. Yeah, so, but the Chinese government persecution towards the Uyghur is the national discrimination and the genocide policy. Until 2016, Chinese government is systematically assimilation and discrimination policy towards the Uyghurs. 1949, Chinese Communist Army occupied the country. At that time, whole total population of the Chinese just to 4%, mostly military and the family of the military. But no, today official number more 40% is Chinese population. It means from since the 75 years from this Chinese population from 4% to increasing 40%. And for us, Uyghurs that time, Uyghur population 85%, 3-4% Chinese, rest of them Kazakh, Kyrgyz, some other people, 10% people. But no official number, China say Uyghur population 45%. It is when 85% Uyghur population in diminished 45%, Chinese population from 4% to 40%, 10 times increase, because China systematically population transport to this area. And for us, family planning policy. This family planning policy, of course, not only for the Uyghurs, and Chinese as well, because China saying, oh, Xinjiang is called big territory, small population, and this is that excuse the population transport. But for us, all the two child, but after you got first child, you have to wait 3 or 5 years, and then you can get second child. If you during that time you have a pregnant, doesn't matter. Just under 8 months, 7 months is pregnant, and if the government is just recognized that immediately force the abortion. This is a very common issue today. Since 2016, particularly 2014, current President Xi Jinping talks of power. He turned assimilation and discrimination policy into genocidal policy. Now, at least 3 million people, at least 3 million Uyghurs, Kazakh, other Muslim people is the concentration camp. 31st century. Since 2016, Chinese government cut all international communication. Before 2016, there is a direct flight from the Urumqi to Karachi to Dubai to Istanbul, Dushanbe, some other country. But since 2016, October, Chinese government and canceled all international flight. And step by step, they canceled to all communication. Last 6 years, we cannot communicate it. You know, today is a lot of persecution, a lot of discrimination, a lot of horrible issues happening everywhere. but you cannot compare between Uyghur and some other country. Today is 21st century. Everybody knows China is so developed country. Is it so developed country? Yes, China is so developed. No, but can you imagine? Since 6 years, I couldn't access my family member. No, I couldn't access my family member. We couldn't communicate. All communication completely cut down. Not only for me. All Uyghur who live in Germany, European Union, United States, exile, in diaspora, last 6 years, we couldn't contact the family member. Only something heartbreaking and sad situation was happening at home. This news found us here somewhere. Last very short telephone communication, my mother, 2017 May, middle of April, yeah. This is the last very short communication with my mother. Since then, I couldn't access. Just after 1 year later, my communication was broke down. After 1 year later, I got first heartbreaking news, my mother died. She was 17, 8 years old lady. She was put in one of the Chinese concentration camps. She died in one of the concentration camps. This news I learned from the Chinese media, international media. 2020, I got second heartbreaking news. My father passed away. Still, I don't know where his cemetery is. After I got this news, I'm trying to contact my family. I cannot access. This is impossible. You know? Anyone from here, you can call Yuhamlan and Azad's friend. You can talk at this. Maybe you cannot physically visit because of the political situation. But for us, we cannot talk. You know? Yeah. And also, last year, I got another heartbreaking news. Young brother sentenced to life. My older brother, he's a mathematics professor. He sentenced, some resources say 17 years sentence, some say 24 years sentence. Still, I don't know how many my family members still alive, how many died, how many concentration camp. I don't know. I talked several times German foreign ministry. Look, you have bilateral communication, bilateral diplomatic relationship between China and Germany. I don't ask you to save my family member. At least, you will contact the Chinese government. I'm a German citizen. Please get information. How many family members still exist? So many died. This is the very, very, very basic right of the human being today. But we don't have such right today. You know, so many Uyghur women in the concentration camp in the forced sterilization and the rape, systematically rape, grouping rape to them. Now is there some camp survivor, former camp survivor because of foreign citizens. They are released. No speaking BBC, Al Jazeera, CNN, all the international media, US Congress, European Parliament. Terrible news. Terrible news, you know. And they are just a very small, 40 quadrat meter, more than 40 people. Staying. Some people laying in the night, 2 hours later, you have to stand up, and the other people laying. You know? And indoctrinate. You have to speak Chinese. Chinese language, Uyghur language, completely different language group. Not linked at all. But you have to forcibly speak Chinese. If anyone speaks mother tongue, this is punished. Physical touch. So many these cases happen in the concentration camp today. And you have to show the loyalty to Chinese Communist Party Xi Jinping. We are Muslim. Before drinks the water, after drinks thanks for the God. Allah, shukran. But no, you have to show the loyalty to Chinese Communist Party Xi Jinping. Thanks Xi Jinping, thanks Chinese Communist Party. Without you, no life. Without you, no water, no food. You have to say this. You have to show the loyalty. Indoctrinate. You have to denounce national and religious identity. No? This is the concentration camp. But outside the concentration camp, also situation is different. During the Ramadan time, fasting is forbidden. If you fast, then you will be put. This is a good reason to put the concentration camp. You know? Have a bird is forbidden. Even gives a name to the Muslim name. We are since more than 1,000 years. We are Muslim. But today, you cannot greet them salam alaikum. If you greet them salam alaikum is good enough reason to put a jail. Yeah, you cannot find any example around the world. On the street, police check your phone. Not only I did. Anytime, police can you check, okay? If any message, you know, Any word like religious, that is the problem. And put immediately concentration camp. No, even you cannot give the name like my name is Isa. Today, Isa, this name is forbidden. You cannot give your children Muslim name, Ahmed, Muhammad, Ayesha, Samet, Khadija. This kind of name you cannot give to your baby. If you had already this name, if you age under 16 years old, you have to change it. Forcibly change it. This is happening today. And another issue, more than 1 million Uyghur children separate from family. 4 or 5 years old children. China sends orphanages and bring to the China, other provinces of China, change the name, forcibly teach the Chinese language. More than 1 million Uyghur children separate from family. Yeah, this is the issue. Another issue is today is happening is forced labor. There is so many Western companies, Volkswagen, for example, Bosch, Nike, Adidas, all have and the use of forced labor, slavery labor today. 2020. This is I'm not saying just last week, 2 weeks ago, United Nations special reporter on slavery. He made a published report on the Uyghur issue. Today, 22% cotton globally from forced labor, from Uyghur forced labor. In China, 85% cotton from forced labor. Solar panel energy, globally, 47% from the Uyghur forced labor today. The 3 million Uyghurs, everybody knows is China because so many Western companies have a factory in China, produce the market and the production in China. In the past, China, because China is a cheap labor. Today is not anymore. Some place of China, the living standard is higher than Europe. No, that's why in China is not anymore the cheap labor. That's why Chinese government cooperate with the international brand, international company, use the Uyghur forced labor. This 3 million Uyghur who live in the concentration camp today, subject to forced labor. Don't pay anything, don't pay anything. And the other Uyghurs, not staying in the concentration camp, also subject to the forced labor. And the World Uyghur Watch organization, 2 months ago, they have published one report. More than 650 international companies have a direct link with the forced labor, Uyghur forced labor today. Yeah. And so but China continue to deny everything. Unfortunately, most of the Muslim countries support China. Pakistan, Iran, Saudi Arabia, this all countries support China, unfortunately. Because share same value. Today, Balochi people, Sindhi people, suffering by the brutal regime of Pakistan, Pakistan is China's good alliance today because they are sharing same value. CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. This is $64 billion project. This project is not benefit at all for the native people there. But this project from East Turkestan, from Kashgar, 3,800 kilometers away. This project starts from East Turkestan, from Kashgar to Gwarda, the Balochistan. That's why China and Pakistan cooperately, one side China cracked on the Uyghur, other side Pakistan cracked on the Balochi people. That's why they are cooperating at the UN level, international level. Yeah. Iran is the same today, because Chinese government have more than $400 billion investment to Iran. Yeah. This is because of the economy, because of the money, then this country that doesn't get. Secondly, the old authoritarian country, China lead forces. Unfortunately, today we have seen in the United States, United Nations, some other countries. Unfortunately, democratic countries is voice split, not united sometimes because of the temporary benefit. But authoritarian country, dictator country, led by China is most of them being one voice. One voice, yeah. However, we have sent international support now. So far, 10 parliament 10 parliament, national parliament, and recognize Uyghur genocide. Canada, United States, French, UK, Czech Republic, Lithuania, Netherlands, and Ireland, and last just June, two months ago, European Parliament recognized Uyghur genocide and the crime against humanity motions. You know? Yeah. And U.S. government also recognized Uyghur genocide. Now is the U.S. Congress approved Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act into the law. Biden signed beginning of January this year, and the 21st of June this year, this law into the law and implemented. No is a U.S. customer body and stop to import any protection from East Turkestan Commission. This is a good step. Just 2 weeks ago, European Parliament also last week, European Parliament also European Commission as introduced the Forced Labor Act. So we have some positive response. And last week, 30 of August, last day, even last minute of the Bachelor High Commissioner of Human Rights in the United Nations, Michelle Bachelet, just 30 minutes before left her office, and she issues Uyghur report. And just 1 day before Bachelet issues this report, China led more than 60 countries strong pressure to the High Commissioner office, don't issue this report, Uyghur report. And then the Chinese government recognized her, since 4 years, Bachelet did excellent job, something like gives high price, but 1 day later, Bachelet issues this report. Then China now is attacked to the United Nations, UN mechanism, and the High Commissioner as well. This is the situation because China now is used it is economic power, trying to monopolize international system, trying to monopolize the United Nations High Commissioner and all international norm, and also misuse is the Interpol. I know China today is the lead. China, Iran, Pakistan, some countries misuse Interpol. I had red notes, you know. I had red notes more than 21 years. That's why I detained so many country borders. Yeah. But finally, in 2018, my red notes was delayed. But since 21 years, I detained. I had faced to deport to China. China's long arm getting everywhere. But finally, my red notes was delayed. China blamed me as a terrorist. You know, I have never seen any bomb, any gun in my lifetime. And my gun is this all the time. I speaking, use my fundamental right, freedom of expression, but China blames both as terrorists. 2003, Chinese put my name in the red notes and the terrorist list. That's why I had a wording around the world. That's why today, even I cannot travel to so many countries. Even I was kicked out from United Nations 2017 in New York. But no, I had accreditation, nothing, you know. Even I was deported to United States 2006 and in the international Dallas airport. But no, when I go there, I will accept the diplomatic channel. But until that time, I suffer a lot. I will and detain so many countries. So that's why now it's the time and suffering people like Balochistan, and we are working together under underrepresented people's nation organization, working together for the many years. So we are completely support Balochist national movement. We have to more cooperate because CPEC, Chinese Pakistan Economic Corridor. This is the one of the in the big project of the China's Pakistan, but this project not benefit at all for the Uyghur people, Balochi people, Sindhi people, some other people in Pakistan. So we have to raise this issue to the United Nations, other international platform. This team, the topic today is in disappearance. I know so many Balochi people disappeared, so many Sindhi people disappeared in Pakistan, in Iran as well. This is a common issue for me. I told you already how many family member is still alive. I don't know how many. This all disappeared. Still, at this 100,000 Uyghurs today disappeared by the brutal regime by the Chinese government. So that's why we have to common goal. We have to cooperate. We have to fight and for freedom. Freedom not free. But we have never lost hope. We believe we can succeed one day. But we have to cooperate. We have to solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's really, really heart-wrenching what is happening in Uyghur people and to Baloch people via China and the democratic countries, United Nations. I asked the audience if you have any questions to Mr. Dogon. You can ask now because he has to leave later. So if anyone has questions, the stage is open.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
You were talking about the concentration camps and forced labor in Eastern Turkestan. So are these concentration camps are the factories where the Uyghur people are forcibly working? Are they in Eastern Turkestan or in other parts of China?
Yeah, this is a good question. Until 2019, because this concentration camp start 2016. From 2016 to 2019, just the Chinese government indoctrinated them. And firstly, being Chinese, this problem, and the indoctrinate, torture, psychological torture, teaching Chinese language, and denounce national religious identity. Then 2019, Chinese government set up a factory inside concentration camp or near the concentration camp, then used the forced labor. And this forced labor Uyghur issue to the other provinces of China start 2008, before the concentration camp, at least 8 years before the concentration camp. And at least 1 or 2 million Uyghurs and transfer, so-called provide job to them. Provide job. And they are working 14 hours, 15 hours a day. Very low salary to them. This program starts 2008. That's why 2009 is a big uprising was happening in Zrumbesh, Turkestan. 5th July. We call it the famous 5th July massacre was happening in 2019 because 2017, 2018, at least 2 million Uyghur transferred other provinces of China, forced labor work, and the Chinese workers attacked the Uyghurs, killed 16 Uyghurs within one night. But no police arrested, no responsibility. Then Uyghurs asking the Chinese government bring this mother to the justice. They are holding peaceful demonstration, need justice. But Chinese police Chinese army use force and they kill. Chinese official number 197 people killed one day. This is a Xinhua agency official number 100. But we believe at least 1,000 people killed that day. So that's just the reason. So that's why, and 2005, among them 10 months, closed all the border, all the internet, all the communication, then slowly they opened the internet, but 2006 closed them. Then 2006, the concentration camp. This, before this forced labor, until 2006, this is a forced labor, but pay little bit money. Very low money. But now is a concentration camp, pay nothing. People happy, at least not die here. Survival, eat something, drink something. This is the situation.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
A very short question. Western Europe, countries of Western Europe and the United States do support your movement and your struggle. So do you see that impacting the conditions of Uyghurs inside China? Has it improved? Has it put any pressure on the Chinese government? What has been the impact of international support?
Well, this is also a good question. Yes, as you said, today is the United States, European country is some raise this issue and the past resolution. But this is, of course, there is some impact. What kind of impact? Until 2019, Chinese government denied everything. No, we don't have nothing. No, even denied. We don't have concentration camp. We have not detention center. This is the liar chip, but and it's quite a lot of international think tank, research institute, and scholar use the satellite image, everything, and the report published. Then China and also pressure was Western country and the 10th parliament recognized Uyghur genocide. So on. Then China cannot hide the reality. Then accept. Oh yes, at the beginning, China is time to time change narrative because of this pressure. Saying, well, at the beginning, no, then saying, oh, yes, we have some such a center, but it is not detention center, not concentration camp. This is vocational training center where trainers the people for good future. You know, we are educated the people, but in the concentration camp, so many professors, intellectual, singer, football player, and the prisoner like my mother. Because look, Xinjiang University, one of the largest university, is the largest university in Turkestan. And the president of the Xinjiang University, Tashplat, he got PhD in Tokyo University. He doesn't need for the vocational training, but he's a concentration camp. President of the medical university, Xinjiang Medical University, Hamrat Gopur, who is the get PhD in Tokyo Medical University. He's a concentration camp. And so many football players, singer, and we documented more than 500 people were documented. Then China, oh, okay, then this is not good. Then change narrative. Oh, they were fighting terrorism, radicalism. This is the narrative. This is the impact something that like. And finally, because of the pressure, Chinese government allowed Michelle Bachel, High Commissioner of the former High Commissioner of the Human Rights United Nations, allowed to visit. But this visit is this investigated. This is just diplomatic visit. No. So China, because of the pressure, sometimes invite some propaganda tour. Some Muslim countries, ambassadors, some journalists bring to there and just use the propaganda tour. Such kind of impact has, but no reality, no any impact, because just and express the concern and the condemn is bring nothing. Should be sanctioned for the Chinese government. Last year, European Union and then plus UK, Canada, United States sanctioned 4 Chinese high-level officials who links of concentration camps and genocide. And of one entity. No, United States also puts more than 100 Chinese companies in the blacklist. No slow impact for this. But just United States, a couple of countries, is the sanctions not good enough. Because economic sanction, political sanction is very important. But this is now, and we will see. So UN, because most of them country was waiting is a UN report. UN report just published last month, 2 weeks ago, 31 August. And this sanction is 51 section of the Human Rights Council is taking place in Geneva now. This time we are waiting some resolution from the United Nations. Then we will see what will happen.
Thank you. Do anybody else have questions? No? Okay. Thank you. Then we're gonna bring the conversation forward, and I'll ask Mr. Luhana to share his opinion and why and how Sindhis are being oppressed in Pakistan.
Dear sisters and brothers, first and foremost, I'm grateful to Baloch National Movement to organize this conference and giving me this opportunity to talk. In the darkest times in our lives, I remember our forefathers used to tell us stories so that we can pass through these darkest of the times. And in these darkest times in the history of our nations, it is always good to sit together to feel that you are not alone, and the struggle will carry on. There are two parts of this title. One is the oppressed nations in the region, and I will focus on oppressed nations of Pakistan, in Pakistan. And the second part is the rise in enforced disappearances. Why we are oppressed nations? Because it is inherent, inbuilt, implicit within the formation of Pakistan, which from day one, which even before the formation, is built on the denial of the nations that were created, established, formulated through the thousands of years of socio-historical processes. Sindhi nation, Baloch nation, Bengali nation, Saraiki nation, Pashtun nation, they say no, these 1,000-year nations are not nations. Your languages are not your language, national languages. Your language is a language that is not part of any part that made the so-called Pakistan. So it is built on the denial of the historical nations. And when something is built on the denial of something, how they can survive? They can only survive on the operation of these nations and these entities. So our operation started from day one of Pakistan. I mean, that was on their agenda to annex Balochistan, that started, and within 5 months of its formation, they annexed Balochistan. They took away our capital, Karachi, and has converted us currently. They are saying in Karachi, what's in this? That's not your capital, who you are. That's not your land. And the worst thing happened to Saraikis. The Ayesha is sitting here. Just in one go, they say, no, you are not Saraikis, you are part of Punjab, you are Punjabis. And what they did in this whole process, Bengalis, which made 56% of the population, they never ever accepted their democratic will from day one. They established, I mean, a country that didn't have constitution for almost 2 decades. It was a country without, and even the constitution that was formulated, that basically made sure that the slavery of the nations has been given a constitutional legitimacy. So because in that so-called combined Pakistan, Bengalis made 56%, Punjab combined with Saraikis, they made 24%, and if you take 10% of the Saraikis, everything made only 14% of the total population of combined so-called Pakistan. And this 14% population, when they reach to this conclusion that these 50 states to continue their operation of nations in this setup has becoming really very difficult. and not as much beneficial as the cost. So they decided to get rid of these Bengalis. But at what cost? They killed the 3 million people. If you go to the Liberation War Museum in Dhaka, honestly, your hair will rise. I mean, I'm a student of politics and a little bit of history learning from Dr. Naseer Dashti. I've seen the atrocities, Second World War, but basically the atrocities that they committed in Bangladesh, that will make you cry. So we come to this Pakistan, where they say to have the control. Of course, we know it is the military that controls everything. But to have all the legal and constitutional, then they say we are in majority. But that majority is artificial. It is fabricated. They say we are 52%. If you take away 20% of varieties, they make only 32%. Or 19% of varieties are 20%. It's still 67% and 68% of Pakistan is of oppressed nations. Baloch, Sindhis, Saraikis, Pashtuns. And you can see one thing. There is a similarity in tactics of operation, of colonize, of operation. Dolkanisa and this gentleman told us that how they are trying to convert them into minority in their own motherlands. And that is happening in Sindh and Balochistan as well. They, according to the definition of UN, they are conducting a genocide. I will not go to the, it has been carrying on since its inception. Currently, in Balochistan, Sindh, Saraiki, an active act of genocide is taking place. According to their figures, the official figures, the UN figures, there are 35 million people who have been impacted. And out of these 35 million people, according to them, 23 million people are in Sindh. 89% of Sindh is underwater. 10 million people are homeless. More than 1,300 have died. And in these 1,300, there are 400 children. And from these 400 children drowned, the bodies of 39 have never been found. There have been at least 50 incidents, 50, where people, particularly kids, sitting and waiting for the rescue, they died because they didn't get food. Older people and children, they died because they didn't get food. They are making an excuse that this is the climate change. Yes, there is a climate change, but this is fabricated. You deliberately did it. To drown Sindh, to drown Balochistan, to drown Saraiki Wasi. You did it. Do you want to destabilize these societies? You want to basically, literally, the thousands of villages in Sindh, they're completely wiped out. This is a genocide of an unprecedented scale. And this is happening in front of our eyes. They're using this excuse of floods and rains as an excuse to get aid. And that aid is arrived, is not reaching to the people. People are dying because of malaria, because of hunger, being surrounded because of diarrhea, because of typhoid, dying. This is a mass genocide. And because it is Sindh, Balochistan, and Saraiki, that is what they want to get rid of. They have already taken all our resources. So they have created poverty, hunger, disease, displacement. They wish we were dead, and they are working on it. Now, in these circumstances, of course, the people will rise. And for dictatorial regimes, for occupying regimes, one of the tactics is to abduct people, to keep them missing, to kill them. And that has been taking place. Probably, I was reading an article about the missing persons, and Secretary General of UN, he issued a statement remembering 100,000 missing in Mexico. And these 100,000 missing in Mexico, these 100,000 are, this is the number since 1964. But in recent years, there haven't been much. So probably in the current world, the 8 million Balochi people, the largest number of forced disappearances is happening in Balochistan. And the UN says that the enforced disappearances is not only a human rights violation of a single person. It is the pain, suffering, and sorrow for the family, for friends and relatives, for the communities, for the societies, and for the entire nation. Entire Baloch nation, entire Sindhi nation are in pain because of the missing and disappeared people. Now, internationally, the UN, all the countries, Pakistan hasn't been signatory to it. They forced Pakistan that they should make the enforced disappearance as a criminal offense. And with a lot of pressure, they say, okay, we are making it a criminal offense. They passed a bill. Do you understand their level of seriousness, that they say that the bill was sent to Congress, to the Senate, but somehow it was lost. So they are trying to find the bill. And even if you read the text of that bill, they haven't criminalized, even in that bill that they got lost, they haven't criminalized the enforced disappearance. They have criminalized those people who are or will raise the voice against the enforced disappearances. The bill says that if you register a complaint, if you go to court, that your person have been abducted by ISI or military or MI, you have to prove it. And if you cannot prove it, you will be tried because you are making a false allegation. Now, how come we can give a proof that a person was abducted by military intelligence? Nobody will dare. The courts, everything, I mean, in Pakistan, there is only one institution, this army that runs the country. There is no other institution. No parliament, no judiciary, nothing. We salute those people who in these very, very difficult circumstances are carrying out a heroic struggle against the odds. So we have to look that, as I said, that basically the UN says that this is one of the most serious crimes that doesn't only affect the one that has been abducted, but their families, their societies, and communities. Most of the international communities are signatory to it. We have got an overwhelming case of forced abductions because, as I said, the largest number of enforced disappearances of today's world are taking place in Balochistan. Why we haven't been able to create sufficient pressure on Pakistan, we have to look into this. We have to review our strategies. We have to reach wider to UN, to the various state or governments, to reach out to them, to create pressure. Otherwise, this will continue. There is a recent intensification because not only political workers are abducted, teachers, artists, journalists, even booksellers, they are abducted. So the reason is they want to paralyze the society so that their capacity to resist is lost and frightened. And why they have intensified? Because, to be honest, it is a collapsing country. How long you could carry on by oppressing people and taking away the resources? How long? What doesn't work? The countries don't work like that. So it always happens that when they have got a crisis at their hands, they become more ruthless, and that is what is happening. It is intensifying. So it is our duty to sit down, to review our strategies, to reach out wider, to reach out effectively, to reach out unitedly, to make some impact, and otherwise this would continue, and probably in the coming days, because we are not, Pakistan is not an isolated country. It is sitting on a gold mine of resources and geostrategic importance because of Baloch and Sindhi people. And there are a lot of scenarios of various countries, various interests, various blocs, and all that. And they are, in every situation, they are ready to work with anyone who could provide them money. So we have to reassess the situation and reassess how we could reach out more effectively. In the final, may I request you to rise and have a 1 minute silence to tell the world that we are not forgetting our missing people, thousands of missing people, and those thousands who have lost their lives in their struggle. We have not forgotten them, and we will never forget them. And we will continue our struggle until the day for their emancipation and for the emancipation of our motherlands. Please rise and keep 1 minute silence. Long live Balochistan, long live Sindhi. Thank you very much.
Thank you. you so much. It was really, really meaningful. And to mention one more thing, that it's very important to mention the current floods and the climate change situation in Balochistan and all over the Pakistan oppressed regions. We have to mention that climate change does exist, and it's one of the reasons that Pakistan is using against the people itself right now. So it's really interesting that he mentioned that it's important to mention that even though the nature give us the struggle, the Pakistan military army is exaggerating it by not giving aid, and even though they receive aids, I have collected aid myself and they were not given to the people. And it's really important to know that even in such circumstances, the whole world is talking about climate change. We are the most least who produced carbon emissions, but we are affected the most. So thank you so much. Now I want to welcome Fahim Baloch from BNM Central Committee and Plus Foreign Committee to share his opinion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll start by this pictorial presentation. If you want to come, it's better for you to visit the home. I'll start my presentation with some pictorial presentation. Before starting it, I'll quote saying of Major General Wischer, who was the Major General who occupied Balochistan on 1839. So he says, when on 13th of November 1839, we occupied Balochistan, when we moved forward, and there was a resistance. When Khan of Kalat, Mir Merab Khan, was martyred, when he was killed, so he writes, so he had a sword in his hand. So he fought till his last breath. So this is just simple history of a Baloch king, how they defend their motherland. The British Empire, with heavy artillery and everything they had, but Baloch tried their best to defend their motherland. Balochistan is a land of impunity. In simple words, I would say it's a black hole, Balochistan, for the rest of the world. Whatever is going on in Balochistan, only limited people know what is going on in Balochistan. Kill someone, abduct, rape, no one knows. So the people, the culprits, the killers, they have got impunity over there. No one asks them. If in the rest of the world you go, if they kill someone, if someone is raped, even thieves, they hide their faces. But in Balochistan, they don't need to hide their faces. In a bright day, in front of the family members, they kill, they abduct, but no one asks them. Yeah, if we go on the history of Balochistan, so as I told you, British Empire occupied Balochistan on 13th of November 1839 until 11th of August 1947. A kind of rule of British Empire was in Balochistan, and on 11th of August 1947, Balochistan independence was announced. And then I would come when the British Empire divided Balochistan with the name of Duran Line or Goldsmith Line. In 1871, Goldsmith Line was there, which was divided with Iran, and then with Afghanistan, 1893. I'll give a brief introduction when Balochistan was occupied. When occupied forces entered in Balochistan on 7th of March, 1948. So again, the brother of Khan of Kallat, Prince Agha Abdul Karim, and who was the first governor of Makran at that time, so he started the resistance to save his motherland. And then it continued. The second uprising, Nawab Noroz Khan, chief of Jalawani was. And the third uprising, led by Sher Mohammad Murray. And then led by the tribal heads in Balochistan, Nawab Khair Bakhsh Murray, Sardar Atullah Mengal, and rest of the Baloch nationalist leaders. And then we come to the modern Baloch national struggle. When, I would not say it when it started, Nawab Akbar Bukhti was killed. So it was a turning point where most of the people came to know. If we see, it started in start of 2000, I would say. When Nawab Akbar Bukhti was killed, so there was a large scale of protest all over Balochistan, and Balochistan was stopped 100%. So there was no system, no government, nothing was there, just everywhere, buildings, offices were burning. The people were showing their hunger, that how their leader was killed, how an aged man was killed. So when this started, even before that, a crackdown started. I remember Ali Asghar Bangulzai, in 2000 he was abducted, and still his family, nearly for 22 years, is protesting for his safe recovery. Even they don't, maybe if he's recovered back, no one remembers his face. Abduction. So there are some graphic photos. You've got some children also here. And the photos are, if, I don't know, we should keep those photos or we should not, I don't know. Because there are some photos that are badly tortured. It's okay, I don't see it. Okay, just let's go. Abduction, torture, and kill and dump policy. I remember when I was reading a report from Amnesty International. So Amnesty International says there is kill and dump policy in Balochistan. Kill it and dump it. No one asks you. Abduct people, kill them. No one would ask you. Recently, in district Ziyarat, 11 people were killed. And what did they say? They were from the resistance movement. And their bodies were very clearly, could be seen that they had not seen sun for many and many years. and there is a total blackout on the media. I was watching television channels, so the news anchor was showing about a donkey how it crosses a bridge in Punjab. But they would never show you the dead bodies of the missing people. The mothers and the sisters, they're crying on the roads for days and days and days and nights. Just they're sitting on the roads. They're not asking for money. They're not asking for roads. They're not asking for your jobs. What are they asking for? Just tell us where our family members are. You have abducted them. This abduction does not stop. Then comes mass graves in Balochistan. People are killed, tortured and killed, and their dead bodies are kept in mass graves. Just the mass graves issue came in media, which got some attention. That was District Khuzda. Amnesty International reported it. Rest of the organizations, they reported it. But mass graves in Dera Bukti were not reported. Mass graves in Turbat were not reported. So there was a just blackout over there. This is very interesting. Thousands of people are missing. They are not found. When the people are dying in different parts of Balochistan, in different parts of Sindh, are in the areas where Saraiki people they live. So the floods wash away everything. They cannot see them, the media does not see them. But when gold is there, copper is there, silver is there, other minerals are there. So deep, they dig and they can find it out. They cannot see. The dead bodies which come out of the rivers, the dead bodies which come out of the mass graves. Yeah, just different. For example, Rakodik is there, Sanda copper mine. And another kind of new wave of colonization is coming. Not just in Balochistan, it's completely coming in that region. That is China-Pakistan economic zone. So a new way of colonizing the people. They are colonizing people on the name of roads, on the name of development. Recently, thousands of people have been forced to leave that route where China-Pakistan economic corridor is there. People have become displaced in thousands of numbers. And it's very simple. On the name of security, they come and burn out complete villages. They abduct everyone. It makes no difference. 3 days or 6 days child or 80 years old man or woman. So it makes no difference for them. Yeah, before saying thank you, last thing I wanted to add, what is difference between them and us? When you think about a nation, as India was divided on two theories nation. There are two nations, Hindus and Muslims. Okay, we agree. There is a difference. But what is the difference between you and us? We love every religion. Balochistan was a peaceful place for every religion. Are you safe? Are the people safe over there? Sri Lankan, a manager is burnt on the right day. Other community members are being killed. And still, 74 years have passed. Still they don't know the difference between Baloch and Balochi. So how we have become together? Even in the textbooks, it's written Balochi people. So I think it's very clear they are totally different from us. And we consider it a difference that is the occupier, and we have been occupied. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It has clearly shown us how much oppressed we are through these pictures. And I think it's very important to know our children that this is happening and this is what we are here for. And this was, I think, our end of the first discussion and the session. So we're going to give the panels so you can ask questions about any questions do you have, so we can answer them, and the people that have already talked, so they can answer. One is already gone, Isa, so you cannot really ask them questions. So, yeah. Do you have any questions? Yes, sure.
I have just one question to the gentleman who gave a presentation on the Kurdish movement.
You're right.
So it was an excellent presentation. Thank you for giving the details. What I'm interested to know, if you could briefly outline it. I mean, you actually have a strategy to push your movement. So how long did it take to convert from a point where you only tolerate the violence and then to strategize, a pushback?
I mean, I told at the beginning, like the Kurdish question started after World War I, like when the Middle East was reshaped by the winners of the World War, by the French and the British, and Kurdistan was divided into 4 countries. And actually, right after this division, even before, like in the end of World War I, there were Kurdish uprisings, but they were like in particular areas led by like tribal leaders, and they had not like this Kurdish national identity, which is like kind of mobilizes all of the Kurds, because Kurdish communities also like divided into different religious groups and different dialects they talk, and even the societies like has been in the history, the tribal factor was very strong. Like the Kurdish society was divided into different tribes, and the national identity was not like the main point of identity for the people. But those uprisings, they were like small scaled, and they have been oppressed by the Turkish state, very bloody and very fast actually. Then it took like a long while, and as I said, like the turning point in the Turkish history especially was the emergence of socialist Turkish movements who have made the topic out of the Kurdish question again. They have been talking about the Kurdish identity. And before it was like nobody was able to talk about the Kurdish identity anymore. They were frightened. I told you, like my mother grew up in Ankara, in the capital of Turkey, but her parents, they were frightened to give speak Kurdish with their own children, because in a Turkish neighborhood that could make big problems for you. And with the discussion in those socialist movements about the Kurdish question, there was a process started where Kurdish young students who also studied in the universities of Western Turkey, they came in touch with their own identity in this topic again. And before, they were talking at home Kurdish, and outside they were hiding their Kurdish identity. And this process, and especially the military coup 1980, which was really brutal in Turkey, led to the point that the Kurds had to start an armed struggle again, because there was no other way. Like if you were publicly promoting the Kurdish issue in Turkey, you would end up in jail and probably die. Like many prisoners after the military coup in 1980, they died because of torture in the prisons. And there was no other way. But right now, the Kurdish liberation movement, the PKK especially, they see the armed struggle not as the main aim. They see themselves as a political party. They try to promote the political process for freedom and democracy in Kurdistan and the Middle East. But they are also aware that the enemies right now, they don't open the room for this political process. So you have to find a way of self-defense. You can't give up the arms right now at the stadium. But they also know that we won't succeed with the armed struggle. There has to be a political process at the end. But right now, the oppressors, especially the Turkish state, they don't get the room for this political process. That's the main point right now with the armed struggle.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions you can ask? Yes. Okay.
I will ask this question to him, Dr. Laku, anyone can answer. We have been hearing struggles, we've been hearing history of oppressed people, oppressed nations, how we all have been oppressed by the oppressors and how they are doing all these brutalities. We've heard how the PKK as a struggle or the other Kurdish party. We have heard there was the fifth Baloch resistance movement is going on, political and armed struggle side by side. Yeah, we know that the Sindhis have been struggling for a long, long time, but we see in all those regions where the indigenous people, or let's say if us a national struggle, people belong to those kind of struggle, they were suffering, but now the people that they were belong to the majority, they are also suffering, or they were in a way supporting them. Let's say, for example, in Sri Lanka now, not only the Tamils are suffering, but the civilian people are suffering. In Turkey, if you criticize the government, even if you are a Turk, you will face the consequences. Even in Pakistan, we can see now, if you talk about, as Fahim mentioned, about religion or anything, that you cannot be safe from those deep states or powerful people. And how oppressed people, oppressed nations like us can unite with one another and can maybe be sympathetic or take sympathies from those people that actually they have been part of the power, but now they are suffering from that very power. Is there a way that we can work that out, or is that a possibility? First of all, among us, a united front, not just a conference or a seminar, but an actual front where you can confront your enemy. And secondly, let's say Punjabis are suffering in Pakistan. Is there a way we can take support from those Punjabis, or they can be any helpful to us, or they will change when the regime changes? Thank you.
Thank you very much, King. Now, a couple of things first in principle. Number one, that the unity of the oppressed nations, there are no two questions. There are. How effective are these united fronts and unity, or how to make them more effective? That is really situation need to be reviewed. For example, the necessity of the unity of oppressed nations, that was even back of our minds of our mentors like Sayatullah Mendel. At that time, we established Sindhi Baloch Forum. Sindhi Baloch Forum works to this day. And of course, there is a need to sit down to talk about the strategic issues and make it more effective and more. But I mean, on many occasions, we have presented a united front, but it needs to be strengthened further. Number one. Now, coming back to this question about the change or the operation in the oppressed. First, anyone who stands with me, I will think it is my step. Anyone who supports my case, the case of my people, the case of the suffering of my people, I will welcome them. But we shouldn't be, because to be honest, as a political worker for last 50 years, we have seen left, it is position, and even say, for example, I remember when we used to, about 30, 40 years ago, we used to raise the issues of oppressed nations. From our very senior left friends, we were say that, look, you are trying to divide the working people are suffering everywhere and they're oppressed. But then there are theories of those, of the masters of left like Marx and Lenin. They say, look, when a nation occupies other nation, of course, it is dominant classes, they get benefit from it. But even the lower classes, that benefit trickles down to the lower strata. Now, say, for example, in the current conflict in Punjab, we have seen, okay, there was one government and there was other part were sitting outside and they were saying, look, this is, they are oppressing and all that. Now they come to power, the other is crying. Now, there will be few people, of course. But with this 75 years of brainwashing, how many people you will find that will stand with us, that will say, look, Balochistan was occupied, it should be free, and we are ready to say, apologize. Say, for example, in the world, a lot of genocides have happened. How many people you will find? How many people will say that we have occupied all the resources and made Sindhi people to die, to live 75% of them under poverty, and we want to withdraw from that? How many people you will find that? We are ready to talk to them. We are ready to reach out to them. But this is an internal conflict. Because why this conflict? Again, what happened? Say, even in the houses we see, the houses which are facing poverty, there'll be more quarrels, there'll be more fights. Because of the economic situation of Pakistan, there is a fight between various ruling elites. And in that, if there are some people who are talking about, say, this military general is bad or this, again, it is the institution that will rule. So we have to be really very, very careful. We should reach out. Okay, we will ask them to come and support us, but we shouldn't depend. And I'm very, very, very sorry to say, I'm not that optimistic. Thank you. There was another question.
Any more questions?
Yes, you talk about this is not a climate.
Sorry?
About this conflict, this is the north of Perth. This is a crime. The upper riparian and the lower riparian. In the 100 years, the upper riparian, they're making the dams.
Yeah.
In the same.
Yeah.
And the lower riparian, the victim of upper riparian, and the Britannia and the new Pakistani. It should be clear to the public, this is the crime, not flood, not climate. This is a simple genocide and crime. Just be clear to the people.
I completely agree with you, because they are selling this, and we are buying, because this is really very fashionable. That Pakistan contributes only 0.15% of the climate change. Yes, it is climate change. But the question is, this heavy rains, that is as a result of climate change. But were these manageable? Because before this, the Indus River was dry. And Indus, there have been, the rains have been, as far as I remember, 90 million cubic feet. So the total rain in Sindh, I'm talking about Sindh. Anyway, there have been 90 million cubic feet of river, of rain. Now, Sindh Indus River has got capacity to run through about anywhere, depending upon the sea conditions and all that, how much water sea can take, anywhere between 5 to 10 million cubic foot of water per day. So say, for example, this all water was, of course, there would have been still devastation, but that would have been 1% of this. They deliberately did. They say, for example, Mancha Lake, from where the water came from Balochistan, the Sindhu was dry. They should have allowed the Mancha before this water reaching into the river, and river would have carried water, and Mancha would have been. So they allowed the Mancha to fill, and then they give it a cut. And when the cut was given, the cities like Khairpur, Natan Shah, and Meher, which is about 300,000-400,000 people, for the Urdu media, for the national media, that wasn't the issue. The issue was whether, what is the name of that guy who was kidnapped, Imran Khan's guy, whether he eat that banana or didn't. What is his name? Shahbaz Gill. Whether that, from where that, okay. No, anyway, so whether he eat that banana, look, they don't consider us as the human beings. Not even, I mean, we would have treated, we people, Sindhis and Balochs and Saraiki people would have treated our animals even with more care. They didn't treat us like that. They deliberated, and it is a deliberate. So we shouldn't buy this. Yes, it was a climate change. Yes, but was it manageable? Within the circumstances, it was highly manageable, but they deliberately, okay, now they did it. Pakistan's Navy has got 430 or 450 or 470 these boats. Have you seen one of these boats? Have they rescued anyone? They deliberately want us to drown, to destroy, to wipe out, and it is a genocide. It is genocide, unprecedented genocide. So that is the situation. Coming back to the issues of dams, it has been when this flood was happening, they opened the gates of the dams, Turbila Dam, because they thought, okay, otherwise the dam will be damaged. And they allowed more water to come and more flood to come and more people to drown, more Sindh and Balochistan and Saraiki Sea to drown. This is a crime, and we should create our narrative and read to the people, yes, it is climate change, but they drowned us, they killed us, they wiped us, they committed the genocide.
Thank you so much. Yes, sure.
For free activities in Paris, we are gathered 10,000 political activists in Paris. France didn't took any action. They not fair judicial system. They ever came. Speak Kurdish movement in what we expect, our political activists are also action in Europe, in civilized world. We ever know any judicial expectation of the Europe or the this kind of Uyghur power. So we together here. What kind of activities here now in the international community? So we are active against the crime, oppressed, genocide. So what with us we don't know. But we ever know the issue is for Baloch organization in Europe also. I know 15 years so many political activists cool Baloch. They didn't get justice for Azad, and we are the oppressed nation. We need to freedom. I don't think so. We ever know much more expectation. What think about that you to the European or American or British forward?
I want to add a little bit of question in it that we talked about a lot of stuff that is happening right now, what happened in past. What do we think about the future? What do we want to do together as oppressed nations or as individuals as well? Do you think that talking about in front of each other who knows the story already, or rather than go to these white westernized organizations to ask justice and rights for our own selves from those colonizers, the exact colonizers that colonized us? Do you think I think it's really interesting to see the perspective that way as well. That why are we asking our freedom through United Nations? Don't the United Nations knows that these genocide exist? Don't they know that we are dying? Don't they know that we are sitting here talking about a genocide more than they do? And it's their job to do so. When we go to UN, we ask them that this is happening and we should talk more. They do nothing, as we already said that United Nations didn't do much, and even though they accepted the genocide and approved that this genocide is happening in China, they didn't do much. So what do we do? What do we plan for the future? How do we make this happen better? What we have been doing last decades. They didn't do much. They didn't put any better circumstances for our people. They didn't do much. So what can we do better so it stops, the genocide stops? If you have any suggestions, maybe. Thank you.
I mean, it's a really hard question. So we're also struggling with it. And I've told you, like, we have 1 million Kurds living in Germany, but I mean, in parts we are facing the same problems we face in our home country. We are also facing the same problems in Germany. Like on demonstrations, the police is attacking us. People are going to get imprisoned because of their political activities in Germany. People got extradited. Their asylum seekers are not accepted in Germany, being sent to Turkey and sent to jail there. Those are the problems we are facing here in Europe. And the so-called Western civilization, the democracy they are talking about, we know that that's not a full democracy. The purpose of democracy for like the white people who are living here, but the democratic rights we have, like, they're really limited. That's what we're seeing here. And still, I think one part of our struggle has to be confront the public opinion in Europe and Germany. We have to tell them, like, you're talking about democracy, but what about our rights? So your countries, I mean, like in our case, Germany is selling weapons, tanks, and whatsoever to Turkey, and they're using it in the war against Kurdistan. And we have to raise awareness about that. And even like the governments, they know everything. The UN, the United Nations, they know what's happening in our countries. But perhaps the people don't know, like the people on the streets. So we have to raise public opinion on the streets. We have to reach out to the society. We have to try to mobilize them, like for defending their own democratic values their governments are talking about. Because when it comes to us, those so-called democratic values, they don't count, and that's why we suffer. But the second part is like, that is one part of our struggle. The other part is like within our own societies. We have to organize ourselves. I mean, like I told you, we're talking about our problems here in Germany as well. Like I told you, like 1 million people, Kurds living in Germany, but how many of them can we reach out? Like how many of them are organized? How many of them go out to the streets to demonstrate for their people in their country? So we have to think about ourselves and how we can reach our own society, how we can organize them, and how to get a strength so the so-called like governments and powers, when we got strong, when we are an organized community, and when we build up the solidarity between each other as well, like the governments have to see us because we're a power for them, and that's what they're frightened of. Like they try to isolate one of each other and get control of us. But when we start to organize ourselves, our own communities, and reach out to each other, so we fight for their interest as well. So they have to act somehow. So we have to put pressure from from the streets and from people, not directly go to the UN or the government. I mean, that's also an approach, but it has to be on both sides, like on the streets, in the communities, raise awareness. Just if you go and talk to your neighbor about your home country, like it's part of political practice. So that's the way to raise awareness in our own communities here. And I think we should do both and not be like in an expectation from the big governments who might help us. They won't help us. Well, if they're not organized, if we not organize our own structures, they won't help us. Because they have political and economic interests, and that's what it is about in the system.
Thank you so much. Do any have more questions? We're going to take a break finally, and we're going to do more sessions after the break. The second session would be called the missing persons, the rise in enforced disappearance and the role of the international community. One more thing I want to add is that we have Dr. Naseer's books outside. It's free, but it also can be, some funds can be gauged as well. Thank you. Yeah, I can welcome you after when we have a break. Thank you so much for giving your time and interest.